Hello everyone, I'm Connel.
And I'm Emily.
And we are a couple of plant nerds currently standing in our favorite place. This is a Garry Oak meadow.
There are roughly 700 different types of plant species within the Garry Oak ecosystem, and today we're gonna go find some of our favorites.
Before we show you any flowers, I have to show you this tree. It's the Garry Oak. The Garry Oak is the only species of oak that's native to British Columbia. Its range in Canada is limited to a very narrow strip of eastern Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. You can tell they're Garry Oaks by this thick greyish bark, usually partly covered in moss. They also have these distinct twisted branches, and I always think they look like trees you see in horror movies. They're a really invaluable part of this ecosystem. Their mossy trunks provide cover for insects, which are then food for songbirds. Their leaves are food for caterpillars. It just goes on and on. You can find them in abundance around the Victoria area, with some of them likely to be around 400 years old. Okay, Garry Oak, we love you, but let's go find some flowers.
The meadows right now are a tangled web of flowers.
You can see a number of species: sea blush in pink, western buttercup in yellow, and this purple flower, the Camas.
Camas is the star of these meadows, and you can see it really stands out with this vibrant purple color.
It's actually a member of the asparagus family, and you can kind of see that before they open up. Looks a little bit like it, right? Once they flower though, they have this beautiful star-shaped flower, which is usually a dark blue and purple. They really dominate the Garry Oak meadows because of their height. Some of them can grow to over a meter tall.
Oh my word, I've just found my favorite flower in all of the meadows. It's the shooting star. You can usually see them bunched together in little groups. And what's so interesting about them is the way they need to be pollinated. They're pollinated through something called buzz pollination, where the bee has to vibrate its wing muscles and shake the pollen loose from the flower. Only certain native species of bees are able to do this, and it's an example of how over thousands of years, native plants and animals of southern Vancouver Island have evolved to live in a symbiotic way. A great example of this is with a white flower that covers this meadow, the death camas, and a tiny little bee called the death camas minor bee.
As I'm trying to set up to get some shots here of these minor bees, let me tell you a little bit about the death camas. As you can see, it has these yellow and white colored flowers with a round top. Now, I talked about the camas earlier. Well, despite their similar names, death camas is not closely related. The bulbs of both plants can be easily mistaken for each other, which can be a problem because camas bulbs are edible and death camas bulbs are not.
All parts of the death camas are poisonous, with dire consequences of eating them to both us and the animals.
The poisonous compounds produced by death camas have been found in both their nectar and pollen, so it's a no-go for most pollinators, except for this one.
It's the death camas minor bee, and this bee specializes on eating the death camas flowers.
It is possibly the only bee that can tolerate its toxins, and you can see it going from death camas to death camas. It is so cool to see the interconnected relationships between these species here and the Garry Oak meadows. Without each other, they could both go extinct, and we would lose two amazing species. There are hundreds of these relationships going on in the flowers around us between insects, birds, mammals, and these plants.
This right here is chocolate lily, and if you come across chocolate lily, it stinks. Chocolate lily smells like garbage or dead things. That one actually wasn't too bad. I smelled worse, but still. Most flowers have a scent, and they do this to attract pollinators. Flies love the smell of awful things. So as a fly is going around the meadow, they can't help but come to investigate the chocolate lilies. As they investigate the chocolate lilies, they pick up some of their pollen and off they go to spread it around the meadow. I absolutely love how they stand up high above the undergrowth on this long stem, and they have these big green leaves as well. And the flowers, oh my word, they look a bit like lampshades as they point downwards towards the ground. You don't see brown flowers very often, but they do have this beautiful speckled pattern. They can be easy to miss, but you can usually find them in patches underneath or around the Garry Oak trees.
You can find Garry Oak meadows in a couple different places, from these expansive meadows to the rockier, more coastal meadows, where the flowers can be slightly different.
I'm looking for some of those more tiny flowers that you find here in these rocky outcrops. Let's go see what we can find.
This is yellow monkeyflower. It has this beautiful bright yellow and these red dots that presumably act like a little runway to get the insects inside. This one is the blue-eyed Mary. They're only around 4 millimeters in length. Here's my finger for scale, so little. They have a lot of color. They're purple on top, blue underneath, green leaves, and a red stem. You can see them usually on mossy, rocky surfaces and patches. This is sea blush. You see it covering Garry Oak meadows, really distinctive with that pink ball of flowers on top and the green stem. Unlike the tiny flowers we've seen, they can get fairly big and they can actually reach over 20 centimeters. There are too many plants here and I want to show you them all. So let's go find our final plant. It's really special and in a secret location as it's one of Canada's most endangered.
That is golden paintbrush, and it's only really found on a couple of tiny islands off Victoria. I can't believe I get to see it like this in full bloom. Golden paintbrush is such a beautiful plant with a really striking yellow color. This plant is so endangered. It's probably one of only about 5 wild populations left in all of Canada. Really important for me to see this plant here because this is a plant that almost went extinct in Canada, and honestly it could still go extinct. Many of the other species that live in this ecosystem are also listed as endangered. In total, it's going to be well over 100 species. These flowers and meadows are so important. The Garry Oak ecosystem has been identified as a hotspot of biological diversity. And here in British Columbia, it's the most biodiverse terrestrial ecosystem in the province.
It's never been so important for us to share and celebrate these magical meadows.
And they really are magical. I mean, we've seen so many different flowers today and there are still so many more, like we barely scratched the surface. And that's what makes this place just so exciting and cool.
These flowers are so precious and in many cases listed as endangered and therefore legally protected. It means we have to be careful and respectful in the meadows at all times of the year, making sure we don't trample or pick any of the plant species. The only exception to this is for the Indigenous peoples who continue to steward and utilize the meadows today as they've done since time immemorial. Thanks so much for watching.